Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Why Ukraine live stream. Dobry dzień, dobry wieczór. Actually, looking outside, it's 6 p.m. Kyiv time, and I'm coming to you from the middle of Ukraine. Welcome everyone who's here, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to try and do these live streams at least for the next couple of weeks, almost a couple of weeks, I think, on a more regular basis. So we have some things to talk about today, and I think you can see the first subject, maybe. There's a lot of things in the news, but you guys know me. I let you guys bring up the news. I tend to talk about kind of big picture stuff, don't I? I don't know. You tell me. So today we're going to talk about, what you see on the screen, among other things. Thank you all for coming. Belle, Greg, Michelle, Ken, Robert, Issa, Keith, Shere Khan, Ozzy, Mitch. Wow, the gang's all here. Thank you all for coming. I'm glad you all have made it. Cheryl, fantastic. Ken, thank you so much. You don't know how big of a help you guys are. Right now, in the lead up to what I'm doing next, which, if you were on the Shills last night, you will know what's going on with me. It's ironic. Sometimes I share more secrets about my personal life on other people's live streams. And there are reasons for that, actually. The Bulwark put out a segment on the Theo Tech brothers. That's interesting. Brothers. I will have to look that up. That is very interesting. Today we're going to get into, just keep in mind before we get into talking about this craziness, nukes and all that jazz. Just bear in mind, okay? Fighting continues. Wow, Belle, thank you. Thank you so much. The fighting continues. Pokrovsk is holding, but it just... Okay, so residents caught off guard by the speed of Moscow's advances, the traditional dilemma, it's traditional now, of whether to evacuate or not is made all the more painful. I know what you're going to say, but I feel like, what are these people waiting for? Look, I understand that maybe you're sitting in America or in another country and you're saying, well, I can understand. But I'm here in Ukraine in the middle of this war. And even when at the beginning of the war, when they were like 10 miles from Kyiv, I was like, yeah, honey, I'm going to get you out of here. You know, and I understand people own their homes and they don't want to, but this war's been going on a long time. We've seen this pattern repeated over and over and over. And I'm gonna say an unpopular opinion. I think that there is a percentage of these people who just they think that the war could never come to them. The Russians aren't really that bad. I guarantee you that there is a percentage, 25%. They exist. Says it need not be a secret if you get new socks for the next adventure. Well, thank you. But there is a percentage of people, 25%, maybe, out here in the East, who are, the Zduni who are listening to, and tomorrow I'm going to speak. I'm not going to talk about it today, but tomorrow I'm going to speak about more about Russian propaganda and its effects here in Ukraine and how insidious it still is. And these people just have their head is full of cotton balls or something. And I know that you guys understand this because you guys know people in Ozzy. That's interesting. Do they not believe that Bucha, etc., happened? It's not like that. It's not like that. It's more. I don't know how to explain it. It's just they're not necessarily pro-Russian. They just don't think it could ever happen to them, or I don't know. There's all kinds of okay. I don't want to get into it too much because I will. Cheryl says I lost the thread of who they are. The people who I will talk about tomorrow, who when I address this issue about Russian propaganda here, the people who they don't support Russia. They don't support Russia, but they also don't support Ukraine. That's Greg, there you go. Such people need to be reminded of what the orcs do to the people in occupied territories. And I think that maybe these people think, oh, that happened in Bucha. It would never happen here. And then the artillery comes up and they're like, oh, okay. Okay, well, right. So the fact that anyway, I want to remind you guys that this continues to happen. This is a mistranslation here. Russia dropped 900 anti-aircraft missiles. What they meant to say here is Russia used about 900 guided aerial bombs in Ukraine in the past week. Just to be clear, these are the big giant Fab 500s all the way up to 3000s. Cheryl, I'm talking about people in Ukraine. Ukrainians. There is a percentage of Ukrainians who are they don't support Russia. They don't believe this war is good. They don't want Russia to come and take their land. But they also kind of, maybe they have family in Russia. They just think war is bad on both sides and they just want to ignore everything. Yeah. There are, it wasn't me. Yeah, it says it's hard to believe there are Ukrainians who can forget all the atrocities. I would say it's more like there are Ukrainians who just don't want to think about it. They just want to go la 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 because they don't have they don't have a way of dealing with it, and there's nothing that they feel that they can do about it, and so they just go la 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 la. And they're not going to deal with it until it's literally in their face, like these people here in this picture. Oh, sure. Isa, that's interesting. Right. Good point. Good point. Isa says, I still have acquaintances here in Germany that are like, yeah, if the Russians come here, I don't know. I don't know who rules. It's all the same. There you go. That's the mentality that I'm trying to get on. Keep your head down. You know, it doesn't matter who's in charge. Everybody's corrupt. It doesn't, you know, that's kind of the attitude that a lot of people have, even in America. Yeah, exactly, Cheryl. Just like in Russia, but understand that these people, the closer, first of all, okay, I'm going to talk about this in more detail tomorrow. But proximity to Russia, first of all, means they're getting more and more of their mass media from Russia, and if they only speak Russian. Ronnie, welcome back, sir. Thanks for coming. Test one shoe. Nice. So, yeah, basically, I want to remind you and anybody who's watching that the war continues. Okay, Russians attack Ukraine over 4,200 times over the past 24 hours. You know, Russians lost 1,300 soldiers in the last 24 hours. Like, just because it's I don't know, not in your local news or whatever, doesn't mean it's not happening. Everybody's, concerned about the election, and I am too. And so it's within that context, we have the Woodward revelations, which is how do I say? Basically, Trump has been talking to Putin this whole time. Yeah, Scruffy, when Russia threatened Sweden, applications to the armed services surged and all Nordic countries promised unlimited aid. Yeah. I mean, look, when obviously the same thing happened when the war started, the full-scale invasion started here in Ukraine. But there is always a percentage of the population. There's a percentage of the population. So it's wrong to say that Ukrainians are indifferent. That's not true. Everywhere you go, there's always going to be a percentage of people who just have their heads in the sand until it's in their face. And they just say, I know nothing, la, la, la. I just want to keep on going with my normal life. Digging my potatoes and driving my Lada and drinking my vodka. So the same is true in America. Same is true in our country. And I think, a lot of Americans have this belief that Trump is going to take us back to the 1950s when everything was great and perfect and wonderful, and all of that, this sort of nostalgia. But remember, the 1950s was also a time of great fear. Ronnie, thank you. It's like the people that refused to flee from a hurricane. Yeah. Yes, exactly. I was going to bring that up. Exactly the same. Greg, does this mean? Sorry to interrupt my own discourse, but Greg is saying he'll be in Kyiv. Greg, does this mean that you successfully got your visa already, or at least got like notification of it or something, because it can happen that fast. It can be real fast. If you did, then congratulations. Right. So what I want to talk about today is, and I hope I can maintain my train of thought on this. You may encounter this logic from people that will say, we have to please Russia, we have to appease Russia, whatever word they want to use. We can't be enemies with Russia because they have nuclear weapons and they're gonna blow us up. And I argue the opposite. Okay. I argue the opposite. Electing Trump basically guarantees nuclear war. Okay. And a key thing to keep in mind is you're not really electing Trump. You're not really voting for Trump. If you're voting for Trump, you're voting for JD Vance. Okay, because Trump's not going to live out his term if he gets elected. Yeah, Michelle, and this is a very good point. Okay, talking about nuclear weapons, talking about whether Russia has nuclear weapons or not. I linked this in my community tab. I posted this, and this guy makes a really good point. This is Paul Warburg, and he likes to do these commentaries where he's just walking and talking, but he says some really amazing stuff, really good things, and I think he's worth listening to. So, in this particular video, which I will link, Aussie Bugga. Yeah, the hurricane caused by the Democrats. Crazy conspiracy theories. So the point that Paul here makes is that the constant Russian flailing about with their nuclear threats is actually a sign of their own insecurity about whether or not their nuclear weapons work. And Shere Khan, ours are antiquated just like Russia, yes, but ours are being maintained. And the argument that Paul here makes, and I tend to agree, and others have made it, is theirs have not. Theirs could not. They're based on their budget alone, right? Based on their budget alone, America has fewer nukes. We are spending $60 billion, right around there, to maintain our nuclear arsenal. And yeah, they are barely maintained. Russia's entire military budget runs about that. So how are they able to maintain their nukes to any level? And in particular the detonators is the issue. Now we can argue, oh well, it only takes one, right? But mutually assured destruction, like that theory which the Soviet Union once held to, when you function under that doctrine, actually the last thing you want to do is make threats, is to constantly threaten and shake your rattle your saber, Right, Isa, the Russian delivery systems for nukes appear to not work more often than not. Yes, remembering the last 4 or 5 Sarmat tests. Yes. Yeah, no, Scruffy, I agree with you. I understand that you didn't mean it that way about Ukrainians being indifferent. It's a I'm not trying. I wanted to point out that I'm not trying to blanket all Ukrainians with indifference. But it is a percentage. Um, yeah, Matt has worked for 70 plus years because the U.S. has nukes. Also, the fact that they are threatening nukes is actually a sign that mutually assured destruction, that doctrine has broken down. They know something. They know something that we don't. I think that there is a percentage. I think there is a percentage of their nukes that work, to be sure. But do the launch systems work, and all of that? So they're making these threats because they know there's nothing behind them. That's the point I'm trying to make. I think that here's the next piece of this puzzle, and it's going to sound a little bit contradictory, but this mutually assured destruction, and also not even the United Nations, but America's backing up of the United Nations, saying nobody's going to be allowed to just invade anyone else willy-nilly. This international world order that existed arguably from the end of World War II until, you guys can argue with me about this, from the end of World War II until 2003. And unfortunately, George W. Bush decided to bend that rule and invade Iraq under the basis of a lie, which, given the 2-year-old, 3-year-old morality of Russia, of Russians, and I am making a blatant statement there, basically Putin said, oh, well, if George Bush can do it, then so can I. Greg, if Mordor was planning on war with NATO, they would not have withdrawn troops from the border to Finland. Yeah, Mordor is counting on no war versus NATO. Yeah, Philippe Ovart. I want to talk about. I'm waiting for more evidence about the North Korean soldiers, but I think I've been thinking it's inevitable. Okay. Reb says orcs could use low yield battlefield nukes if they run out of the thermobaric missiles. I don't think that Russia will use nuclear weapons on Ukrainian soil. I think that Russia is keeping the nuclear weapons it has for defense against NATO. That's what I think. Really. This is the main point, and I think this article makes a really good point here. The West cannot use its values to make sense of Russia. We Eastern American brains of the last 70 years or so, we have a certain moral sense. We have a set of moral values, and Russia doesn't. It's really, really, really different. And the way they think is inherently different. Okay, yeah, Mr. Squiggle, Sarmat is a new missile delivery system. The old systems were made in Ukraine, it has been said. And many should work. Yeah. giving up on the international order means that and I've said this before, as you guys know, every country in the world of any size, of any capability, has got to be right now looking at how can we get nukes? How can we get nuclear weapons? And Mr. Squiggle, you made a very good point about the old missile systems. A lot of the weapons that Russia is using in this war, in fact, were designed, if not built, in Ukraine to begin with. Ukraine, shortly after the end of this war, if not before, will have the capability, will have nuclear capability. They've got the skill. They've got a lot of those engineers are still alive. A lot of the technical systems, the old factories and laboratories are still around. Okay. It doesn't take much to imagine a Ukrainian drone like this. Just for example, this Ukrainian drone, Cessna drone, 745 miles inside Russia. There you go. These, just to see it again here. So this is basically effectively a converted Cessna. Okay. These drones can carry up to about, I think 500 pounds. I could be wrong about that. It's not too far off from a small nuclear warhead. Okay. If Trump abandons Ukraine, okay, and forces a significant number of, maybe not forces, but encourages a significant number of European nations to abandon Ukraine, and Ukraine's not going to give up, even if Zelensky, signed a peace treaty tomorrow. If it didn't involve taking back every freaking inch of Ukrainian land, he's going to be out on his ear. Out on his ear within hours. Yeah, Ronnie, that's the thing. I'm letting you know right now, Ukraine's going to make nukes. It's going to happen, whether and the only question needs to be, is Ukraine going to make nukes while this war is still going on out of sheer desperation because they've been completely abandoned by every freaking country in the world? Or are they going to make nukes after the war is over, purely as a deterrent, and never use them and live in peace, for all eternity? But the fact of the fact of the matter is, one Cessna drone to Moscow is all it takes, and they could end this war, at least for Ukraine. Yeah, the territory of Ukraine and the children that Pyotr stole must be returned. And all it takes is one of these, maybe two, Moscow and St. Petersburg. And yes, there are a percentage of Ukrainians who want to stick their heads in the sand and say la 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 la. But there's also a percentage of Ukrainians whose daughters and sisters and mothers were raped, whose children were stolen. You think that they're gonna just say, "Oh, Russia, gosh, it's okay. You came and stole our land and committed all these war crimes but we forgive you. No. Never back, a weak man into the corner, right? And give him no out. Okay, that's the situation. The whole thing about, whether Trump will sell out Ukraine to the Kremlin. There's no debate. Of course he will. In many respects, he already has. Simply by making Ukraine a political issue in this election, he has effectively prohibited most 501c3s, according to their own rules, from organizing aid to Ukraine. Most 501c3s, before Trump came out against Ukraine, there were a lot more charities who were giving to Ukraine. I'm talking about in 2022. And then all of a sudden, it just dried up. They exist. When I search for Why Ukraine on TV, all I need to type is Why Ukraine, and the vids show up. That's cool. That's good to know. That means I chose well. Yeah, no, I agree with you, Ozzy. I'm listen, please understand, I'm not pro nuking anything here, guys. But just think about how things can spin out of control, how quickly things will spin out of control under this situation. And I'm really concerned because, I mean, I know everybody's like rah Kamala, but the percentages are very narrow. And I can tell you, I remember sitting in the Spacebar Cafe at NASA Ames Research Center the night Trump was elected, and we were all rah. It was a big fun time. We never thought that Trump was going to get elected. He was, as far as I knew, he was behind in the polls, and now the polls are much closer. So I don't trust any of that. So I highly recommend giving this article a read. The West cannot use its values to make sense of Russia. You really have to be, I would argue, pretty steeped in Russian culture and viewpoint. Before the war, I had many Ukrainians try to tell me what the Russian mentality is or was, and how nihilistic perhaps it is. How little they value human life and their own life, and we just cannot apply. This is the problem that our leaders continue to have over and over and over. And I really do believe that that Russia pulling all its troops away from NATO doesn't necessarily mean that they're not planning to go to war with NATO. It just means that they don't have, there's no gray area, there's no fuzziness between not at war, peace, with NATO, and nuclear war. So I want to. So now I've been talking about really negative stuff. I want to envision, or help you envision. Maybe we can envision together a different way that this could go. A different way that this could go would be that Ukraine gets all the weapons that it needs from the United States and the EU, and all of the stuff out of all of the freaking excess army depots and everything else in the United States is emptied out and just sent to Ukraine. And Russia is defeated in Ukraine within the next 2 years. As a result of that, the blowback from that political instability, the Russian government falls. And that's still a scary thing because it's what George Bush was scared of under his Chicken Kiev doctrine. But I would say that he just delayed the inevitable. And Nils, thank you so much. I mean, really, guys, because I've basically stopped teaching now because I need to prepare for, like the next thing, the next move. And so you are really helping, guys. Nils, thank you. And Reb, welcome to the Last Alliance. And Lauren, wow, I thought you were like a member already a long time back. Catherine, just remember, you please feel free to join our Discord channel. And if your YouTube is connected to Discord, you can just basically the next time you go into Discord, if you have a membership, Why Ukraine should show up there. The Last Alliance. Anyway, in this best of circumstance down the road, 2 years, let's just take that number, 2 years down the road, Ukraine gets all the stuff it needs within the next year or two because we have Kamala, right, and we have a Democratic majority, and the Republicans don't filibuster, all that stuff. Okay. Russia's going to fall apart. NATO needs to be ready to swoop in and take the nukes. I maybe not occupy Russia, but maybe, thank you, Isa. I'd say harsher secondary sanctions in addition to all the weapon systems would help too. Oh, hey, Frag. Thanks for coming. So blockade, blockade rather than hit and miss sanctions would be likely like actually trying. So a blockade of, for example, the Baltic and Vladivostok, those areas. Yeah, that needs to happen too. So, and then Russia collapses, and then NATO needs to be ready to kind of swoop in, make alliances with different factions, and just make sure the nukes are safe. Because, and then whatever happens with Russia, civil war, whatever. It's not pretty, but it's better than the other way around, because I guarantee you that if Ukraine is just totally backed into a corner and it feels completely abandoned by everybody else, that's a good point. They exist. Thanks for bringing that up. Chechnya is popular this week. Please discuss why Russia was defeated there, despite the Grozny wreckage. Geography or what? Right, yeah, Isa. Basically, whatever it takes to clearly state Russia, your shit stops now. Yeah. Interesting. That is why Kennedy called it a quarantine of Cuba and not the blockade it was. That's interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah, no, I mean, Chechnya is what's going on with Kadyrov is a good example. This is an older article, but nonetheless, there's been shootouts in. I mean, this is just a tip of the iceberg, a taste of it. Really. Wow, thank you, Reb. You gifted 10 memberships. You just got a membership. Thank you so much. Yes, Keith. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I bet secretly the U.S. and China, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought, are in the background figuring out where to deploy their special forces in Russian nuke sites. I hope so. Because this, the best situation that we're looking at is that sort of a breakup, and I mean, so they exist, the point of why Russia was bogged down, defeated there. I mean, the first time around, just the general ineffectiveness of the Russian army, and the way that they basically won was bribing one of the factions, Kadyrov, to join their side, and it's almost like they're trying the same tactic on us. They're trying the same tactic on the United States. Like, it's almost like Trump is the next Kadyrov, right? Yeah, Shere Khan, it's the portable nukes that cause an issue with that. It is. That's right. The ones that are mounted on trucks and get moved every however often. But it'll start from the Caucasus. That's what everybody is saying now. When the Russian Empire finally falls, it'll start from map of Russian republics. Yeah. So it's really important to remember that Russia is not just one state. It's actually a lot of countries within the country. And a lot of these places were swallowed up by the Russian Empire, and those people are still there. In many places, they're no longer the majority, but those different ethnicities with completely different religions, completely different cultures, they're all still there, Lynn, thank you for asking about Discord. I should have created a link before. Silly me. I will put a link so everybody with new memberships can join. Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, we've already seen it with all the private armies, the militias, all of that jazz. So we have to stop putting our heads in the sand, though, and this is a situation where we need to, when this election is over, because nobody's paying attention yet, but when this election is over, we need to I don't think our elected officials, maybe somebody in the Pentagon or what have you is thinking about that, but I don't think our elected officials are thinking about any of the stuff I'm talking about here, about securing Russia's nuclear arsenal in any respect. Lynn, here we go, guys. So those of you who are new, If you'd like to join the Discord, I don't think we have any trolls here for today, so that link, if you use it, it's only going to work for the next hour. So I do that to limit random trolls coming into my Discord. But again, you don't need it if you have a membership and your YouTube is connected to Discord. You'll just automatically, it'll just be in there. You don't need a link. If you have Discord, you're good. Yeah, so that's the main point that I wanted to make. The first part of our deal today, you know. And you may say that, oh, that's crazy. Ukraine could never land a nuke in the middle of Moscow, and I disagree. It, you know, the drone attacks are increasing on both sides, you know, and this attack that happened with the Cessna plane, this was well within striking distance of Moscow, you know. And so it doesn't take much imagination to imagine somebody getting a hold of the Russian version of this and I mean, I'm talking about like Ukrainian partisans within Russia, for example. You know, I don't think that Ukraine would even consider doing that except at the very last resort. But I can tell you this, that if that were to happen, if there were to suddenly be a nuclear explosion in Moscow that was not attributed to, an accident, but I mean something serious like in the center of Moscow, do you think they would blame Ukraine? No. They would not blame Ukraine at all. Whatever was left of the Russian government, they would immediately blame NATO for that. I mean, they already blame NATO for everything Ukraine does in this war. They think that NATO is in Kursk right now. They legitimately believe that, at least some of them, So I guess we can move on. And you guys have, I hope you've watched as much as you could of the human safari documentaries that are coming out. This is from a couple of weeks ago, but I don't have a solution to this problem yet. Yeah, Lauren. Yeah, they could do it, but Ukraine chooses to maintain sanity. Yes, absolutely. But when you back someone into a corner where they have no other choice, yeah, Russia pre-blames NATO for everything. Yes, exactly. So, we really need to think about kind of an Iron Dome, an electronic warfare dome over Kherson. And I think we need to start pressuring. I mean, I think Ukrainians themselves are the only ones who have the technology to do it. But it's something we need to start pressuring Ukraine's allies to sponsor and to help implement and to fund. I'm sorry. Just because why? I mean, this is obvious war crimes. It is possible to maybe not stop them entirely, but reduce, mitigate by just basically, I mean, nobody will have cellular service in Kherson. okay, or Wi-Fi, but there'll be no drones, essentially. And that's what that's ultimately what needs to happen. And if it continues, yeah, well, Lauren, the problem with, I agree with you about a Patriot battery or two covering, if not Iron Dome. I agree with that, but the problem is that Ronnie, I'm glad you found that funny. I tried to paint a butt, got shot down. Okay, I'm glad you found that joke funny. Yeah, Mitch, when Kherson was taken back, my thought was, can it be defended from bombardment? And the way it can be defended from bombardment is actually with drones, with attack drones. So Kherson was getting bombarded a lot, and then drone teams moved in there and started pushing back the artillery. And so now is basically it's drone team versus drone team, essentially. Yeah, Greg, thank you. Too expensive. That's the point I was making about Patriots and such, is using a Patriot missile to take out a drone. It's I mean, I know that every human life is worthwhile, but you're talking about like using an elephant to crush a mosquito, basically, and the size and weight comparison is actually pretty pretty close, yeah. So yeah, the interceptors must cost less than the interceptee, or it's not. Nils, one day I'm gonna get a gifted membership myself. I hope so. I hope you do, Nils. Yeah. So what really needs to happen is massive electronic warfare coverage, and this is something that maybe I will be involved with. I would like to. Yes, I hope Ukraine is. Keith says, I hope Ukraine is working on EW drones with long battery life. They could hover and cover, and long range thermite drones. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I want to just take some notes here. Shirkan, thank you so much. By the way, 10 memberships. Wow. Well, somebody has a name of Prison Yard Gossip. That's an interesting one. I want to talk to that subscriber, because that's funny. I'm curious. Oh, Greg, you're a member now too. Fantastic. Maybe Skynex would help at this point. I mean, the accuracy, the size of these drones being so small, they're just 7 or 10 inch drones in many cases. Even, yeah, I mean, the laser systems would be perhaps viable, Ukraine. I want to take some like Kovka. You guys are making me think of things that I want to talk about tomorrow that I know I don't have time to talk about today. So I'm taking some notes so I don't forget as we go along. Shirkan, Nils, how did it miss you? It keeps missing you. Maybe wait, Nils, maybe you are a member and that's why you just don't know. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. You don't know how much it means to get your support. So that's what I'm hoping can happen in Kherson. Otherwise the city's going to have to be abandoned. Ultimately, really. So, but these, this stuff, I understand. Like I was saying, there's a percentage of Ukrainians who they just have to tune this stuff out and they can't pay attention to it, and for their own psychological reasons. But it doesn't mean that they have forgotten. Shirkan, thank you. Are you going to keep trying until Nils gets added? Like, I'm going to keep trying. We'll see who. No, Nils, maybe you're already a member and you just don't know it. I think that's the deal. I think that's it. Ozzy Bugga says, I'm a bit of an artist. My undies usually have crayon marks in them. Yeah, no, I'm an artist. I draw flies. Anyway, no, but seriously, Ukrainians, even if they, for their own psychological benefit, they can't pay attention to this all the time, doesn't mean that they are forgetting. And that's the second thing I wanted to bring up today. I think that we can nobody can in their right mind anymore can say this is Putin's war. There's nobody left who can legitimately argue, the Russians don't really want this war. I mean, I know that there are polls saying that the support is as low as 28%. I get that. But where were they all this time? I mean, I'm thinking back to the Iraq War when there were millions of us protesting against the Iraq War, out in the streets, getting beaten, tear gassed by American police. I saw it myself. I got tear gassed. I saw a 75-year-old woman shot with rubber bullets at point blank range 2 meters away. Repeatedly. And we had to run out into the street and grab her and pull her back. This was in 2003. Okay. Where are the Russians protesting this war? And as far as I'm concerned, they all have collective guilt. They exist. This is a good statement. That war at Chechnya in about 2001 gave Putin a big headache until Kadyrov was bought. Why was Russia failing until then? Was it Chechen gun laws, geography, superior training? I think it was just Russian ineptitude. There's just Russia, they're just doing the same thing of just pound them into the ground and hope that works. Pound them into the ground and I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm curious. Ozzy, this is what I'm like after working 13 hours straight. I feel you, man. Come home a little punchy. I get it. That's interesting. In Kherson, are they installing random agricultural grid fencing? Drones would hit it and crash. Need to alternate the heights. That any type of like cheap physical barrier. It's not a bad idea. I have some ideas. I'm not going to share them here publicly, not yet, anyway. But they are things I've talked about previously. Well, Wow, Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison's a member now. I feel like my work is done here. Like, oh my gosh. Oh, Ronnie, you're a member. Oh no, Ronnie, you gifted memberships. Well, thank you, man. Wow, you guys are going crazy. It's awesome. Now we're Nils. What if we find out that Nils was a member this whole time? Oh my gosh. There we go, Shirkan. I think Shirkan summed it up very well. Russia cannot fight an unconventional war. I think that's the best answer to your super chat. They exist. Yeah. It wasn't me. I can understand that there are not many protests in Russia, but I will never understand why are so many Russians celebrating the war crimes their soldiers are doing in Ukraine on a daily basis. And that's the thing. Silence. I think silence. I want to have a bumper sticker with like a Russian flag that says "Silence equals death," because there are so many Russians who are saying nothing, and I hate to say it, but I follow a lot of Russians who I actually like, and I know that they Russian YouTubers. I mean, who I know they don't support the war. I know that they do support Ukraine, but they're not as vocal about it as they could be or should be. And I understand they might have reasons for that, but it's no longer an excuse to me. I believe that when this war is over, however this war ends, Ukraine is going to have their GUR is going to be set up a little bit like Mossad. You know how Mossad went around hunting Nazis? Nazi hunters for like the past 70 years. I think that the same thing is going to happen in Ukraine. There's going to be a group of Ukrainians, whether part of the government or not, people whose families, people to whom horrible things happened to their families and family members and friends. Then they're not. Holy crap-a-moles. Oh, Nils, you just bought a membership? Is that what it had to happen? Oh my gosh. All right. Well. Oh, business account and creator account cannot receive membership gifts. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's interesting. Thank you, Lauren. But yeah, I mean, I really believe that in the future, Hague trials or not, like for the next 70 years or what have you, there's going to be a Ukrainians just hunting down Russians all over the world. And this is what I would say to, Russian kind of, Russian YouTubers and personalities and things that aren't like, come out hard in support of Ukraine now, because there's going to be a list. It's going to be like the naughty and nice list, except it's the kind that you don't want this Santa Claus coming to your town. You don't want the Ukrainian Mossad coming down your chimney. And so I would like to ask, and maybe this is something for another time, but encourage those of you who also follow, some arguably pro-Ukraine, but Russian like YouTubers and things like that. Send them little reminders to say, hey, while you're out there doing your lifestyle YouTube channel or whatever, trying to make money, make sure you're supporting Ukraine. Yeah. Yeah, Michelle, I'm sure someone is making a list and checking it twice. Exactly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. And the same is true, maybe not as severe, but the same is true in Ukraine. I was saying this to some Ukrainians a week or two ago. I told them, listen, save your receipts. Save your receipts, because there's going to be, when this war is over, if not before, there's going to be a reckoning of, maybe I've said this before. If I'm repeating myself, I apologize, but there's going to be a reckoning of Ukrainians versus other Ukrainians. The Ukrainians who, hid in their apartments to avoid conscription. Ukrainians who, there's going to be levels. There's, you have outright traitors, and then collaborators, and then Zduni. Oh, Lauren, welcome. I like your name. That's a great name. There's going to be levels. You'll have traitors, collaborators, Zduni. Those are the ones we call that. That's the ones who wait. Above that, perhaps draft dodgers. I don't know who, where, how it's all going to shake out socially here in Ukraine, but I really believe that when soldiers start coming back from the war, they're going to look around and say who was helping and who wasn't. And there will be kind of a shakedown within Ukrainian society about that, with regards to that. So, there are other things I can talk about today, but I think that's where I want to stop. That's where I want to end. I'm trying to do shorter live streams. And Ken, thank you for coming. So I'm going to thank everyone who came today. I think I will end it there. Tomorrow, I want to talk about the new law about foreigners being able to serve as officers in the armed forces. I've talked about it before. But yeah, Ronnie, this is the thing. I'm curious how Ukraine is going to treat the collaborators after the war. I'm curious about that too. Curious about that too. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So tomorrow I'm going to do a live stream at about the same time tomorrow. And I'm going to talk about some of these other subjects, particularly about how I think the Ukrainian army and the International Legion might change in the future, and how that's going to change. And we'll be talking about Russian propaganda in Ukraine, and also I want to talk about Lake Kharkovka. That'll be our three main subjects, among other things. So with that, guys, thank you all for coming. Thank you so much for the they exist for the super chat and for the memberships. And please come to the Discord. If you didn't get the link, here it is again. So thanks, guys. Slava Ukraine.